I'm just going to hand over to Mr. Kagwa. He's our moderator today.
Hello guys. Feels good to be here for Why Not Exhibition. My name is Andrew Kagwa Maiga, and happy to welcome you for this exhibition, but I'll be handing over the microphone to you because I believe I can project.
Fine.
Anyway, so for starters, welcome to the exhibition. It's the very first time I think I'm seeing her solo exhibition. The last time we touched base was more than 10 years back. 10 years back. I think it was Echifananyi Chamtesa when they were reimagining Echifananyi Chamtesa. And since then, I know a lot has happened. Irene has gone on to study and do amazing things. But for starters, first tell us about mapping the unseen path. Like, what's the first unpack this heading for us, the title.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
It's nice to see you here. Let me introduce myself before I start. I'm Piloya Irene, an artist from Uganda and from Gulu particularly. Mapping the unseen is a work that I've been experimenting with for the past 3 years. So this started as when I went to Ghana, my first step was to try to feel comfortable. And in the process, I realized that I had to come into contact with several items or objects, people, materials that would remind me of home. And being an artist from Uganda, I had been introduced to working with backcloth. And starting my master's, it was the first thing that came in mind. I thought of how will I start from a different material? How about I go back and then investigate the backcloth that I'd been using in Kampala? Because right from here, it was just a matter of buying it and then casting, creating masks, and then having sculptures and all that. But then when I got there, it's quite a different setup in that we are trained to appreciate the kind of materials that we work with. So in the process, I had to start digging deep. What is this material? Where does it originate from? Is it something that is globally located or not? And within this process of going into the forest, coming back to the studio, then to the archives in the museum and all that, it was just like I was trying to move up and down, trying to connect ideas from one to another, and that is also one way of mapping something. Yeah. So it's a work that I've been working on. As my first exhibition was There is Hope in the Tears of Separation that happened in Gulu, which is also a bit connected to this because in the process of moving up and down, I started having flashbacks of memories of home. Some of the things that happened long time ago would come back to me, and I had to now adapt to this new place whereby you find that, first of all, the food was quite different. There is a lot of chili and all that, but then I had to survive within that location. So it's something that, yeah, that whole thought of survival was just eating me up. So I had to start sourcing or looking out for what exactly can I feel comfortable working with as an artist. So the first step was to start investigating about the backcloth which they had, which is called the chen fabric. This is a material that they used to use before the coming of the kente weaving. So backcloth is not only a material that is used in Uganda, but then also all over the world. It's a global material. So as a way of appreciating it, I had to dig deep, and I even learned the techniques of creation. It was a practice that had already been long gone forgotten, but then I had to revive it within a certain village called the Hemang. It's quite weird how someone who comes from a different location comes back to remind you of how you used to do things way before. Yeah. So I started extracting the tree bark. That is after doing the research and all that. I started extracting the tree bark from the forest, bringing back to the studio, and beating them, boiling, and doing all that process of heating to create something that is stretched up, in fact a fabric. And during all that, I realized that there were several ideas that would come in mind. So now the practice starts to open up. I don't become restricted, but then I accept the material to lead me. So in all this, I'm trying to connect, trying to weave ideas from here to there to come up with something. Yeah. And I also end up creating an exhibition that shows the process of creation of artworks instead of the final product as an artwork itself. So that is what I had been doing. So mapping the unseen is just all these connections, the weavings that I had to do to come up with something. Yeah.
When you look at your use of backcloth, okay, cheng.
Chen.
Yeah, when you look at your use of cheng here and our use of backcloth, are there connections between them and us when it comes to how we perceive the materials?
Yes. The techniques of creation is the same, apart from a few areas where theirs was a little different, but then the extraction, and then they don't grow it, only that they harvest from the forests. And currently, as we speak, the species are distinct from most of their forests right now, because the practice is gone and then they're not looking at. But then the beating, and then the boiling, and then the fabric that comes out, they use them. They also used to put on before the kente woven fabric came in. So that is what they used to use. And then also it was a material that was traded among the West African countries. Yes. Some of these things were also done within the Congo. Yes. Democratic Republic.
But it's not a symbol of death, like.
No. In West Africa, it's not something that was used as a symbol of death. Yes.
Andrew, ask if the tree heals. Does the tree heal? Like how ours do here?
Yes, it does, because it's the same.
Regenerates.
It's under the same species. It's also a fig tree. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk about. I've seen some of your work features you. One, for the person that's seeing it, what exactly are you trying to tell them at that point?
As a point
Yeah.
from my work.
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
I'd like to suggest that you use the mic because we get a few words you say
Oh.
and then we release the rest.
Okay.
Oh.
I thought I could project.
Oh.
Maybe it's my ears.
So some of your works feature you, and I've had an experience with artists who feature themselves, because it turns out to be that most of those works are very, very personal. Is it the same case with you and with most of the works that are featuring you directly?
Thank you. Yeah. My works are autobiographical because in this case, speaking more and making reference to myself as a person. And at some point, I also try to relate to the materials that are within my locality or my environment, how I end up appreciating these materials and then look out for the narratives behind these materials, try to excavate the histories, the background that most of these, especially the trees, they're the ones that inspire my works the most. I like using fibers and also tree bark. So I relate all these to my past. So the works are autobiographic. Yes.
You've just talked about a couple of tree bark species, I think in one of the rooms, and you the names are naturally right.
Yeah.
First, tell us something about those tree barks. Why those specific ones?
Okay. So the trees that are in that work, the work is called Memory in Store. Let me first explain a little about what it involves. The work is a composition of sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach reacting onto the tree barks. The tree barks are from different trees that are found within my ancestral home, that is in the village. To me, it's a paradoxical way of preserving some of these ideas that we have of home. Because I come from a background that faced the tragic war in northern Uganda, and as a way of appreciating or probably recollecting all these memories, it's also a means of archiving them in forms of artworks. So I decided to extract tree barks from my compound and from around the land where my father is currently settled, because this is a place that had been looted down during the war, and then we had to rebuild from scratch. And some of the items that helped us to identify where we originate from were the trees that were left on these compounds. Some of them were burnt down, but then they had to regerminate and all that. But then these play a major role as a means of reconnecting with the place where one comes from. The idea of placemaking comes in. And how do I push this forward? I believe that within the artworks, also storing these memories of these past, but then in a paradoxical way, in that the reaction, the bleach that is introduced to react onto these trees, some of them end up eating and some keep on going. So it's a process that keeps on going, and I don't know when it will end. There are some that I had introduced 2 years back, but then the reaction is still ongoing. So it's just like how memory is. You don't get to restrict the reaction. When we look at neuroplasticity of the mind, it talks about how the brain restructures itself. So these trees are more like things that trigger or maybe evoke all these senses, the emotions, the memories, the ideas of how to recreate from scratch and all that. So it's the reason as to why I created that work. It's something that I've been experimenting on for the past 3 years. So I have named them. One, it's each of the tin has a name of the specific tree bark. And in this case, I'm also questioning the notion of what determines the price of an artwork. When it's something that gets to be demolished or maybe diminishes over time. So this, instead of pricing the work, I use the price tags to put the names of the trees that are within each and every container that is there. Yeah.
Is there jackfruit in Guru?
Yes, Canon. But then it's not part of that.
Yeah.
Specifically, the trees that I put in there, these are trees that are not, in fact, they were there before, they existed there, and some were planted by my ancestors and some were planted by my parents and all that before they left the place. But then the fruits, I think there are few that were inclusive because I have the shea tree, I have the shea nut and all that. So all these tree barks that are within the same compound where I come from are within that
Those
work.
are names of trees or?
Yes.
You earlier said the trees were like landmarks, and you talked about the wall. And I remember I asked you this earlier on the day when we were talking. But when I meet my friends from the north, most of the times I feel like they did not experience the war because they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Is this the first time you're talking about the war in your artwork directly?
Not really. The first time it was during the exhibition of the Tears of There is Hope in the Tears of Separation. That was my first solo exhibition that happened in Gulu, and it was a work that I intentionally took there. It was site specific because I intended for the work to resonate with the people that come from there, and through that I managed to evoke all the senses, the emotions. Some people had to tear up, they started crying, and they would share their stories, their experience of the war and all that. So to me, I look at an exhibition as an opportunity to open up or to open conversations. It's like I do not want to put up the work to restrict my thoughts or maybe impose my thoughts onto the viewer, but then to allow people come with their different perceptions and all that. So in one way or the other, it was more like an opportunity for me to research or maybe get feedback from the actual local community that experienced the war. And in one way or the other, it also helped me to release some of the feelings or maybe some of the emotions that I'd held back for several years growing up, and then you keep piling, you don't let go. But then working in this way has also helped me to learn how to let go and then adapt to new ideas and appreciate whatever comes within my local environment. So in that work, I put up bleach drawings that were made using bleach onto backcloth. and then it kept on eating throughout the process of the exhibition. So you get to realize that something is burning, but then I don't have the control to restrict the reaction of the bleach because it's a metaphorical reaction. It's a metaphorical representation of what's happening within the mind of the artist, and also how it helps to evoke some of these within the viewers that come to the exhibition space. Yeah.
Still within the same room, because I think that's this room just above here, which has much of that work. There is this particular work which is text. Are those your thoughts or somehow letters to yourself? What's that?
So I usually write down my thoughts, and then when need be, I come up and then put them together. So all these things, I started writing at a young age, but then writing to myself. I doubt if I've ever shown anyone to read some of the things that I write, because I feel like it's one way of releasing what I feel. So I keep writing down in beats and all that, and then when I feel like it's time to let it out to the public. So this time, I felt like, okay, maybe I should put out one of the poems that I had come up with about the war. And this poem sums up all the during the war and then the post-war, and how we are now living, trying to rebuild, come out of what existed, and try to also act like things are normal. And it also takes me back to the question you asked about people not feeling free to speak about this. To me, I think it was also a way of fear because of the stigma that was around or maybe surrounding all these ideas. Because when I was in primary, we had to leave and then come and settle within the central just to study and all that. But then the stigma you face from the fellow children or maybe pupils that you go with to the same school, some of these things, they stick to the mind in that it's very hard to let go. So one is always afraid of speaking about all this and then saying that, okay, this and this happened, this and that. So they treat the story as something very personal. Yeah.
Okay, before I invite questions, we talked about earlier, which was the way you described your work. Like most artists go into the details of ink on canvas, charcoal and what, and your work doesn't get into that detail. Is that something intentional?
Yes, it's very intentional. If you look at the works that I've put up today, number one, most of the installations are of objects. And some of these objects are objects that we have in our home settings. They're intentional, just to remind you that art can be made from anything. It's also, my work is also challenging the status quo of art being traditional. Looking at art as strictly maybe the painting or maybe the sculptures and then installing them there and all that. But then in this case, I get to be free to put up anything that I want, and then I also look at it as an artwork. If you look at the installation of Memory in Store, which is of the tree bark reacting with bleach, as an artist, I look at it as a drawing. It's an installation, but to me it appears as a drawing, because we have to be open-minded to see that drawing can be anything. It's not restricted to only lines or maybe on a surface and all that, but then it's also something that if the artist decides to put up, the creativity comes in where you collect objects and then put them, how you design them, how you create a composition. That becomes, it has, coming up with a composition is a drawing. So to me, it's not restricted to having marks on a surface, but also how I get to introduce all these objects together and then come up with something. To me, it's a drawing. And then for the case of the cabinet and the pillows and all that, these are objects that we see at home. It's to make you think of an exhibition space, not only have the works on the wall and all that, but then also have the objects that are familiar within your spaces where you come from. Now in this case, you're seeing this within the exhibition space. So it's more like you're weaving the connection. Everywhere you go, you can see an artwork out of each and everything that you find. Yeah.
All right.
I will open it up to you guys. For anyone that could have a question, we'll have someone pass the microphone to you. Yeah, Gloria. Oh, put up.
How is everyone? Peter? Yeah, Piloya, for the new forms of artwork you've done, are the fibers from the bark of the tree or is a different material altogether?
I have two different fibers. The first one is the chen, which is the tree bark, the bark cloth, and then I have the kapok, the silk cotton tree. I have the fiber that is extracted from the silk cotton tree. It was a collection because the seeds keep spreading off, and then it's in one way I looked at it as something that portrays. It was mimicking the idea of migration, moving from one place to the other. So whenever it would get to Hamatan is the dry season, so these pods would open up and then the seeds could the seeds kept on flying. And the whole process of collecting each and every seed to come up with a large quantity of that, it was a hectic thing to do. And I started to dig deep into the kapok tree as well. So I wasn't limiting myself right now to the chen bark cloth and all that, but then also trying to appreciate different trees and investigating, trying to excavate the narratives that are buried within these trees, because we see them as trees, but then they also have histories. They have layers and layers of information that are hidden within these trees. So what inspired me the most was looking at the idea of the transatlantic slave trade. This tree was brought by the Dutch, and then it was where the slaves would stay and all that. So I found it very interesting in that if you relate with the idea of home, these trees were also looked at as landmark heading back to West Africa. Whenever the slaves would return from the Caribbeans or maybe from Europe, from the West, and then cross over to the Caribbeans and then back to West Africa. They grew up very high, and then they were the ones that were used to locate the places of origin, where these people come from. So it was quite inspiring to see that there is something that I can relate to. And also, yeah, so the whole process of moving up and down is like a triangular rotation, because you're moving from here heading there. And it also inspired me to start collecting seeds of trees and then start planting them. You're nurturing a plant, and to me it's more like a practice also coming up, because I don't look at art as just creating using a material and all that, but then how about experimenting through growing, germinating a seed and then nurturing it, watering it, taking care of it to grow it to something, that can also be an art piece for me, because it's just like memory. It keeps growing and keeps going and all that. So, and at some point maybe it can die off and then fade and all that. So it can decay and all that. So my interests are just around there.
I want to kill you with a question.
Mine is not a question. I just want to appreciate, because my name is Miti,
Oh.
which means trees in Luganda.
You're my artwork.
And I did not like my name for so long, because
You should.
like people were like, why you call trees? And over time I've grown to love it, but at this exhibition, after you talking about trees like that, I feel proud of my name. So yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Thank
my
you.
name is Miti.
It's nice to have someone who can appreciate the work like that. Thank you.
It's probably, I'm Irene, an artist as well. I really appreciate this exhibition. I had a bit of a conversation with you earlier. The amount of care that has gone into making it and exploring it and actually sharing something that's not so easy to share, but in a way that is absorbable, let's say. It's not something that's easy to do with art or an artwork, but also delving into personal memories and tough personal memories is not something that comes easy, and I really appreciate that. I'm just thinking about trees as well, and about trees and about your choice of, I don't know if before the war were you intrigued by trees as much? Was that something that intrigued you as much, or is it the character of the tree? You know, like when you go to the botanical gardens and the majesty of the tree, and the fact that it's also supporting all this other life around it. So that character of the tree, is that what drew you to the material of the tree? It's just really, yeah.
Thank you, Amy. It's not about, it's not something that came before, but then it was during the war that I got the love for the trees, because they acted as a protective measure. So when you leave the home to go and then sleep under a tree, because the huts were very precarious at the moment, they could easily get looted up or fired up, and then all that, and then they would attack at any moment. But then these trees acted like mothers to us, because the mothers were the ones who would carry us on the backs and then run with us and then go lie down and then all that. So the tree, from that moment, I started looking at it as something that is very special. It's not just a tree, but then it is something that can protect. So I looked at it as a protector. And then from that time, I have loved to plant trees just from nowhere. And then it also came into my practice, where I started now extracting to experiment with them. Then I get to appreciate them more.
He's asking.
Who is asking? I did nothing because I was young. My work was to run around and then tell stories about it, and then we'd laugh around. Oh, last night we ran and we slept there, and then we came back and all that. So by that time it was something like, it was something that appeared normal. But then as you grow up, you get to realize that, okay, maybe my life was in danger at that moment, because we would get up and then you'd be around home the whole day, and then in the evening you had to pack up and then go. You're not even sleeping on a bed, it's just fabrics from the grandmother and all that. So it's a whole experience. maybe I would share with him later. Yeah, but then now I can laugh about it. But then earlier on, I would get so emotional talking about it. Yeah.
Maybe another thing I wanted to ask.
Hi, so I was really impressed and intrigued by your writing, and I think you're speaking about it being an emotional process, but I'm just wondering the poetic aspects of it. Is it something that comes from like, cultural poetry tradition, or is it something that you just sort of, because it's very visual, and yeah.
I look at it as a means of expression, probably. Yeah. Because there are some things you can express using the artwork visually, but then there are those that come out as thoughts and all that, and then you try to look at which way can you let it out there. And then I thought of the text, and then in form of an archive, and then I used the typewriter to type and all that. It was just an experience with Canon.
Okay, I've seen your previous exhibitions.
Mm.
I think here you've added another layer into your work, which is photography. And please can you speak more about the new forms you have added into your work?
Okay, the photography comes in as a result of me sharing images. I have been away from the growth of my child, so it's something that is also personal. So the only means of communication and feeling of that gap being present in each other's life is just a matter of sharing photos, and then having my sisters, my brothers, my parents, they would send photographs of her, and then I would also share. And then every time it became like a ritual, in that every time I went back home, I would take photos of me and her, just to have it with me all the time, so that I can be able to think of her. And it's also something that reminds me of home. What have you left home? The child. So the photographs, it's something that I've been doing, only that it's the first time for me to show one of the works. Maybe I felt brave enough to bring it out, but then I've been doing it for some time. Yeah.
It's just, I asked you earlier, maybe you don't have the answer yet, but is there a hope for us to see this work somewhere, or is it something that you could please think about for this exhibition to probably travel, or, I don't know, evolve in some sort of way? Because I think it's something that needs to be shared further.
Yeah, I'm very open-minded, and then I think I also don't like the idea of having control over things. So probably God knows what happens next. But then I know I'm just very open, and then it can easily turn out into something else. Because usually the works that I produce or maybe show during the exhibition, they're not final. They're works that are in process. Yes, the process of creation. I don't bring out something and then I don't like the idea of imposing. So hopefully it will turn out into something else. And then I plan to probably show it again. Or maybe when it has evolved into something bigger. It may not be here, maybe Gulu, or maybe somewhere else.
Do you have any art not about yourself?
Yeah, I've been doing that. So I don't know. I think whenever I get back to Uganda, that feeling comes, and then it also influences the kind of work that I create. But then when I'm elsewhere, I do work that is not even connected. Yes.
I want to see that work.
Okay, we Well, I'm hoping we, yeah, exhaust. Oh, someone still has a question?
All right, I think that's it. For many that have not yet, oh, someone has a question eventually.
Oh, three guys.
Hello everyone, I'm Ethel Anya. And Piloya, you talked about you actually taking the initiative to plant trees. Backcloth is going extinct, especially here in Uganda. And we don't also have it much in the eastern north, that's for sure. And have you also influenced, or have you actually influenced others to take the initiative to plant trees? And since I've been traveling a little in the northern or West Nile or even eastern Uganda, there's a lot of charcoal, people do burn trees to do charcoal, which is like destroying the climate or, everything that goes on with destroying trees. Yeah. So I was wondering if you've actually initiated or told others or educated others to take time to also plant trees. It may not be backwood, maybe any other kind of tree, but making sure that they don't only destroy the trees to do charcoal, but for the other trees, like let me say the shea butter trees, the backwood tree, to make sure that these don't really go extinct, because it's really so sad that these are beautiful, trees to have, and there's like big significance in our lives or even back then. So is there a chance, or is there a way that you can actually involve people to have these trees, planted wherever they are?
Thank you, Ethel. First of all, I wouldn't say that I'm into advocacy for climate change and all that, but then I'm looking at it from the perspective of an artist. So currently I'm also planting trees, and I hope to experiment with these trees. And yeah, it's going to be a practice in years to come. But I'm already planting trees, and within no time I will be having forests around very soon. And I'll invite you to have a look at my exhibition of a forest. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it also reminds me of my exhibition in Kumasi, which I did in the forest. Yes. So I don't look at an exhibition as something that has to be attended by humans only. But then in this case, I extracted material, worked on them in the studio, and then took them back to the forest to exhibit. So these works were meant to reconnect with their places of origin, and also how can the trees themselves experience the work, the artwork. Yeah, that is how funny it can be. So the works were in the forest, and then we had to document over and over and over for some hours, over 8 hours. We were in the forest. It rained, the birds were there, everything, all these things. It was quite an experience. So that the work now carries a layer of having reconnected with its origin, and also it adds on to the narrative that you get to give. So it doesn't have to end with creating the work and showing it the exhibition, maybe like in the gallery or museum or something, but then now you get to let also the environment experience art. And right now I've also planted some trees, and I hope to continue doing that. Ethel.
I 100% relate to this exhibition. And when you speak about the existence of trees in people's homes as a sign of mapping, that's exactly how we also want to find home.
Thank you.
And when I visit aunties or neighbors around, everybody has a tree in their compound. And it's majestic. And it's like very nostalgic being in this space. That's why I've been kind of like, what should I say? I don't know. Because there's just a lot running. And there's one statement I left with the last time I went to the village, which was, what is left for us? And what you've presented has kind of like given a bit of clarity to that question, you know? Because one of the reasons I asked myself that question is because also we do try to do agriculture, but you see lots of trucks taking food away from home. So you're wondering what is left for us. And I really love this so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Even guys, like they even stopped people from bringing charcoal from Gulu because there's a lot of deforestation and charcoal. So as you going along this road, easily see cut down trees, bushes that have been burnt down, and it's kind of like sad to look at. Yeah.
Thank you. It also reminds me of the notion of the Kekalkwara actually is the chiefdom. So they've come up with a law to restrict the cutting of the sheer trees within the villages, within the town and all that. So if anyone is found cutting, you're fined or expected to undergo a punishment. So it's an initiative that people are already doing. Yeah, and I think it's quite good. And also, the work is a way of harboring these thoughts, but as a form of a narrative, or maybe just as ideas within. So it's a concept that drives the work. Yes.
Okay, so any more thoughts?
All right. I think I would say thanks very much for showing up. And if you've not yet seen the exhibition, please, you need to get in and see it. It's such an amazing one. My personal best is the cracked mirror. Fragments. That's the name. I believe one day we shall talk about it.
It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. But otherwise, thanks very much for coming and, of course, listening to us. I enjoy the rest of the evening.
Okay. Drinks on you.
Wait, on what?
Wait.
On you.
Let me send out my gratitude to Kenon and Emma, then Suna, for helping with the putting up of the exhibition. Thank you so much.
Cool. We thank you too.
I appreciate.
All right, now drinks on everyone.
I see what you did there. Oh no.
Please feel free to ask any question when we move in.